Well, it is my honor and privilege to introduce my friend and colleague of long standing now, Olivia Hansen. So many in our family know Olivia and how much she does for the world work. She has a passion for synthesis, and she manages to work it out on the physical plane so that it really looks real. Some of us have had, well, you know, that's got to look real. It's got to be real. It is real. Olivia was recently very responsible for really helping the Dalai Lama in his last Washington event. You know, somehow I get the idea that it was her idea, you know, and that somehow he went along with it. She was a very strong contributor to that in many ways, and there was that, he presented on, what lawn was it of the Capitol? The West Lawn, yeah. So he put in his presence right there, and this was one of Olivia's big projects with respect to that. I mean, she's just a terrific manifester and somehow vitalizing so much of what is happening in the world community and what has to appear. You keep on using these manifestation words. Certain things that are in our minds have got to appear and be seen. And Olivia is tremendous at that, making sure that, well, groups like ours, you know, are appearing. You know, the seven rays are coming back around in a cycle, largely, well, entirely due to her instigation, really. I think I'd forgotten about the seven rays or something. Anyway, Olivia says, it's time, zing. Okay, here we go. Well, anyway, Olivia has a long title for today's talk, so I'm just going to read it. It is an inside look at the Dalai Lama, Kalachakra, and the World Peace Talk at the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. How many of you were there for that? See, I mean, not an insignificant number. It was just wonderful. And Livy had these great seats, and she let us get right up there in front and see what was going on. And some of us even got hauled up onto the stage with His Holiness, which was a big surprise and lovely, you know. My sixth ray comes out. Anyway, Libby, welcome, welcome.
Well, hello, friends. It's wonderful to share with you this afternoon. So, as Michael is talking about, you know, and as many of you know, and some were there, I had a major experience with the Dalai Lama in Washington, D.C. last summer. So first, I was the lead sponsor for Kalachakra for World Peace at the Verizon Center in Washington, D.C. I was also the lead sponsor for and a planner of the Dalai Lama's free public talk on world peace that was held at the West Lawn of the U.S. Capitol. And I was also involved in helping to arrange a meeting between His Holiness the Dalai Lama and President Barack Obama, who are both Nobel Peace Laureates. And then, right after these 11-day events, I also went with His Holiness the Dalai Lama to Chicago, where I was a sponsor at a 2-day public interfaith event there with the Dalai Lama, sponsored by the National Theosophical Society in America. So it was a very wonderful and busy July for the Dalai Lama, and it definitely was for me too. So I bet you're wondering how all this came about. Well, yes, it's somewhat of an interesting story, and I'd like to share some of it with you. Well, it all began a couple of years ago with inspiration that just dropped into my meditation, and there was an increasingly strong impression that would not let up until I said yes, of course. But I always say yes, and then I never know exactly how things are going to manifest, and this was just like that. The idea was for the Dalai Lama to hold a Kalachakra somewhere in the United States. It was to be held in the United States because we needed it. But then we could be of great benefit to the world because we have that potential to do that. Outstanding potential. So I agreed in meditation to do anything that I could to help bring in this spiritual impression and vision into manifestation. And thus I became involved with a request to His Holiness the Dalai Lama to hold Kalachakra in the United States. Now Kalden Lodo, who's pictured here, he lives in Washington, D.C., and he was also getting this spiritual impression in meditation too. And he asked the Dalai Lama. Well, when the Dalai Lama said yes, he would do it, we were delighted. Delighted that Kalachakra for World Peace, the Dalai Lama had chosen Washington, D.C., and I thought that was wonderful. I thought it was perfect because the United States, so many people look to the United States for leadership in the field of world peace. So this resulted in me going to Washington, D.C. to meet with Kalden Lodo. And he was named the head organizer for Kalachakra. And working with other Buddhists there, and then me collaborating closely with Kalden. Kalden had been a monk in the Dalai Lama's monastery in Dharamsala, India, so he knew all the religious aspects of this, unlike me. I had only attended Kalachakra in Toronto in 2004. But I knew something quite spiritual and transcendent was taking place then, and I knew Buddhist philosophy. So that was what I knew. Oops, I don't want to be there yet. I'm still trying to bring this in. Anyway, and I, like a lot of people, took the Bodhisattva vow. Because for me, it was something that I was already attempting to live in my practice and study of the Ageless Wisdom teachings. So I began to attend a lot of Dalai Lama events and then help sponsor some of them, dealing with things like universal spirituality and ethics and values and virtues like compassion, kindness, mindfulness, those kind of things. This is just the Dalai Lama just wants to be on, and I'm not keeping him off. I haven't done that yet. But anyway, yeah, of course. So anyway, that's how it all began, and Kalden Lodo became my dear, dear friend. Anyway, at the end of 2010, I went to Dharamsala, India, and I had a private 20-minute meeting with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And he and I had deep discussions on many of the things I just mentioned. This idea of a universal approach to the teachings and ethics and values and how to benefit the entire world, So we had a wonderful rapport, and then he asked me some questions about myself, which I answered, And then he closed his eyes, and suddenly he stood up, and then His Holiness spontaneously gave me two amazing gifts. So one was a gold jewel wheel of Dharma, which is representing the philosophical teachings that we both value. And I was so startled and surprised about this, And then the other gift he gave me on the other side was his personal metal calendar. And he told me he uses it every day as he took me in to his office, his private office. And you advance the date by turning that world. That's how you advance the date. So anyway, His Holiness gave me this, and I was so awed, and I said, well, I can't accept this, because you use it every day. And then he said, but you must. And so I did. But it touched me so deeply, you know. I was just so awed and appreciative. Anyway, these two wonderful gifts from the Dalai Lama and the energy that they contain served as an ongoing source of spiritual encouragement for me as I worked with Kalden Lodro in planning these Washington, D.C. events. Kalden and I had shared a vision to take the esoteric energies that would be generated at Kalachakra and share them in some way with the world through some kind of large, free, public event. And then we had decided on a world peace talk with the Dalai Lama and then to beam it around the world. So in my meditations, I had a vision, you know, as we started then trying to figure out how to manifest this, I had a vision of the Dalai Lama speaking, and the U.S. Capitol was in the background. And when I went to Washington, D.C. to meet with Kalden Lodro, we went over to the National Mall by the Smithsonian, that many of you may know this exact spot, with the U.S. Capitol in the background. And so that's where I thought that perhaps this was reflective of what I saw in my meditation. Anyway, so we tried to reserve that space. But then we learned that the National Mall is undergoing this 2-year renovation. And because of that, a lot of space is closed down, and so really there was no space available for anywhere that would work for such a large gathering. So, anyway, then I started checking other locations in line with the U.S. Capitol and the sacred geometry that I knew was a part of this in some way. And I sensed this was really significant. Anyway, someone suggested RF Stadium. It was on the other side of the Capitol in a direct energy alignment. So Kalden and his people began discussions with RFK people. But for many reasons, this didn't work out. It just did not seem to be the right location for the World Peace Talk. So plans for Kalachakra were moving along. The seed money I donated early on was helpful in inspiring the Kalachakra organizing team. Because in the beginning, they really didn't have very much money. But just the vision and the hope, which was so powerful. But they knew that it would take several $1 million or more to rent the Verizon Center. And that for an 11-day period, and then to cover all the other, many other expenses. So it's going to take a lot. But our goal was not to make money. We just wanted to cover our expenses, and if there was anything left over, then anything left over would go to charity. So, as you can imagine, there were many, many organizing obstacles to overcome. And Kalden would often call me before his long weekly organizational meetings with his wonderful team of volunteers. You know, much like this, it's all done by volunteers. And I would offer ideas and encouragement. You know, as I held to this vision of what could manifest. So, week by week, things began to come together, but so much to do. And then eventually, at the top of the list, it was the very pressing issue of finding a location for the Dalai Lama's World Peace Talk. Someone told Kalden that the west lawn of the U.S. Capitol might be available, but it would need the approval of members of Congress. And we just laughed, you know. Congress then couldn't even agree on what day of the week it was. So the idea that they're going to approve of the West Lawn of the Capitol for the Dalai Lama talk, well, no. So anyway, we were running out of time, and I was really getting concerned. And, you know, we were using prayer and, well, meditation, prayer, invocation, and so forth were used by both of us. Anyway, finally we learned that if the Capitol Police approved it, and if we used a very limited stage, then a permit for the use of the West Lawn could possibly be granted. And very importantly, we would not need the approval of Congress. And so that was wonderful. It was music to our ears, and it almost seemed like magic. So Calvin immediately began the process to obtain the approval, and finally, with little time to spare, a permit was granted. And so then we quickly moved to line up the stage, the MC, all the talk things that you need to, the sound stage music and so forth. There was one more piece of seeming magic that was needed to successfully bring about this World Peace Talk. The afternoon before the World Peace event was to be held, rain, and lots of it, began falling. And the weather forecast was for 4 to 6 inches of rain. Yikes. Yikes, because that much rain would make the lawn at the Capitol a soggy, muddy mess. Impossible for seating, and that's where the tens of thousands of people had to sit for the Dalai Lama's talk. So something had to be done. So for my part, I immediately called the esoteric groups that I knew that were there. Lots of people from the Alice Bailey groups, and some from Agni Yoga, and some from wisdom groups. And I asked them to please start meditating that for the highest good, the rain would stop, and to invoke clear skies. And I also felt pretty sure that the Dalai Lama's lamas were also doing what they know how to do, too, at work meditating and invoking to improve the weather. And after just a couple of hours, wonderfully, the rain in Metro DC stopped. Our meditations and prayers were answered, and to us, it just seemed like magic. The rain continued falling nearby, and they even had flooding. So we were very, very fortunate. Anyway, now you have a little of the behind the scenes. So let's see how it all turned out. So we'll begin with His Holiness the Dalai Lama's World Peace Talk at the U.S. Capitol. As you can see, it's a beautiful sunny day in Washington, D.C. with huge, huge crowds sitting on the West Lawn of the Capitol to see the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama gave a magnificent talk on world peace, speaking entirely in English, which was wonderful to the very attentive crowd. And his talk was beamed around the world. Whoopi Goldberg was our popular mistress of ceremonies, and the Dalai Lama loved her. My friend, well-known cellist Michael Fitzpatrick, played his musical performance of Compassion just magnificently. And the large crowd was delighted with all the World Peace events. Two special dignitaries attended. His Holiness the Karmapa came from India and sat in the VIP chairs near the stage with us. I had met the Karmapa in India. On the left in this photo, think you can see Leslie Carmack, there I am, and Susan Fangman. And of course, they're both here at the conference, and many of you know them. Okay, next to the Karmapa seated here is Lobsang Sangay, and he is the new Prime Minister of the Tibetan government in exile. And Lobsang Sangay, the new Prime Minister, studied at Harvard, and he has a very, very big leadership role now in the Tibetan government in exile. You know, the Dalai Lama has purposely stepped down from any kind of civil leadership, and this is something His Holiness has wanted to do for a long time. So Lobsang Sangay is the new Prime Minister, but with increased responsibilities. And here I'm visiting with him, with my friend Glenn Mullen, a well-known Buddhist writer and teacher. So these were my guests at the event. My sons, Chris and Nick Hansen from San Francisco and London, who flew in especially for the event. You see Leslie Carmack and Susan Fangman, and they stayed with me at the Dalai Lama's hotel. We were on the same floor as His Holiness, just a few doors down. That was kind of magical. And then my friend Glenn Mullen. And so the World Peace Talk was a wonderful success. We were all just so delighted and just so grateful for how it had turned out. Okay, so now let's take a look at Kalachakra at the Verizon Center. Well, Kalachakra is presided over by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who serves as the guru and teacher. During Kalachakra, each attendee is invited to visualize becoming the Kalachakra deity, who combines its innate male and female qualities into one being and embraces a process of spiritual enlightenment. There is a definite science to the formulas, visualizations, and spiritual practices working with energies. Participants at Kalachakra can choose to do one of several things. They can choose just to receive a blessing from the Dalai Lama, or they can decide to take the Bodhisattva vow initiation, where you promise to remain to help others and help dispel the miseries of the world. Or the third thing is, in addition to all this, participants can choose to take the Tantric vow initiation of hastened evolution and spiritual practice. One thing about this idea of initiation, in the Buddhist tradition, an initiation means an empowerment to begin one's study and practice of a subject. You know, it's not the culmination of a study or training, as we often think of it in that way in the Western world. So Kalachakra is a commencement of a new spiritual effort for many people. Last year at this conference, our friend David Regal presented here. He's a scholar of Bailey teachings and Theosophical teachings, Buddhism, and Sanskrit as well. David pointed out that in his opinion, 3/5 of the Kalachakra teachings are similar to those teachings that the Tibetan master Dwal Kul gave in the Alice Bailey books. For many people, they serve as an updated form of the wisdom teachings that have been created for the West without the ancient cultural aspects. The DK Kalachakra connection that David Regal gave is significant for esotericists to think about and consider. A video of David's talk was visually enhanced by Mar Sorrell, and we put it on YouTube last year before the Kalachakra began. And so far to date, 7,200 people have viewed this teaching video, so it's done quite well. And if you missed it, we'll give you the YouTube address if you want to look at it. In Kalachakra, there is an intricate sand mandala that is created by the monks using colored sand to create images that represent the entire world and everything in it, including where 722 deities live. The sand mandala also represents impermanence and non-attachment, because after the beautiful mandala is created and used for Kalachakra, it is immediately disassembled and the colored sand swept off and returned to a river or a body of water. So this is a brief overview of the purpose of Kalachakra. The Dalai Lama chose the start date for Kalachakra for July 6, 2011, the day of his 76th birthday. The first day of Kalachakra, I was invited to greet the Dalai Lama in the morning upon his arrival to the Verizon Center, and then to sit on the stage, and I was thrilled. Later, 4 of my guests for the day, Michael and Tuya Robbins, and Susan Fangman and Leslie Carmack, were invited to join me on stage. And it was wonderful for all of us. I was invited to receive a kata, which is a traditional long white blessing scarf. So I was invited to receive this from the Dalai Lama. Later, we all stood up as His Holiness the Dalai Lama departed for lunch. After lunch, everyone celebrated the Dalai Lama's birthday at Kalachakra. There were special events, and the Dalai Lama gave a talk. The sons of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King attended and spoke. And there were ceremonies and greetings. And Tibetan dancers. We arranged for a special video greeting from the Dalai Lama's dear friend Desmond Tutu, which really delighted him. The next day, Kalachakra got underway in earnest with prayers, meditation, chanting, and teachings. A sports arena was turned into a sacred space, and the highest spiritual energies were invoked. And you know, this reminds me of what we do here in creating a sacred space at the hotel. During Kalachakra, I was called to the stage 5 times to participate in Kalachakra ceremonies. And of course, I was very happy and a little awed too. One time, I was invited to the stage to throw the stick for the level of empowerment that Kalachakra would bring, which was quite an honor. I was going to say, I'm the person up there in yellow, but that doesn't quite narrow it down. Right there. Who knew? I just wore yellow. I had no idea. I just chose that day. When I threw the stick, my stick fell towards His Holiness, and that meant the highest level of empowerment, and that was wonderful. However, I felt this empowerment wasn't just for me. I felt it was for all women. I had that intention when I threw the stick. Later I learned I was throwing the stick just for myself and that someone else was throwing it for all women. But as it turned out, her throw wasn't as beneficial as mine. And since my intention was for all women too, then I think all women benefit in this highest empowerment, which is so important right now for all women. All women benefit too. Nearly 150 esotericists attended Kalachakra, and many of them at my urging. Calden Lodo was so kind, and he knew that I wanted to share my front row tickets with everyone, with my friends, so he kindly had my tickets printed up early so that I could distribute them, like when I came to this conference and elsewhere, the VIP tickets. So 50 friends each had one day up-close seating at Kalachakra near the stage. My seat was on the front row, directly in front of His Holiness. So it was super to share this up-close Kalachakra experience with friends. And here, as we know, there's Liz Coley and Jan Dietrich. And there were more dear friends, you know, but I just don't have pictures of everyone. And so the teachings and the initiations proceeded. And then the Dalai Lama gave a talk at a luncheon for sponsors of Kalachakra and their guests. And there I am with my guests. The Karmapa attended Kalachakra and sat in a special place on stage. The sand mandala was created. And then at the end of Kalachakra, it was disassembled. And interesting, the Dalai Lama first takes off all the representations of major deities. So that's what he's doing here. And then the sand is removed. And then the Dalai Lama and his monks go to a place of water. This was a river. They had prayers, and then the sand was returned to nature. So over 14,000 people attended Kalachakra. And although it was not our intention to make a lot of money at Kalachakra, and we kept ticket prices really low, and we gave away so many tickets to Tibetan people and to really to people that if they couldn't afford to come and we knew they really wanted to, they were able to get free tickets. And our concern, of course, was just covering expenses because we knew we had these huge expenses. So I was so surprised when Calden Lodo reported at Kalachakra that we made approximately $1.9 million beyond our expenses to be able to give to charitable Tibetan causes. So it was just amazing, but I think it shows the wide support and love that many people feel for the Dalai Lama, as well as the growing interest in Kalachakra, because we had so many wonderful donations and so forth. I think, so it was wonderful, and it reflected the belief and the intention and the vision we had that it would all turn out well, and it did, even more than we could ever imagine. Many people said this was the best run Kalachakra ever. I've only been to two. I don't know, but I know it did take a lot of a special effort and flexibility on Calden Lodo's part, and his magnificent team's part. Again, this volunteer idea is just magnificent, and the dedication of volunteers, and we know that here, and it was certainly a factor there. Anyway, the Dalai Lama, besides leading this 11 potent days of Kalachakra, he added so many additional significant events to his schedule that he was constantly scheduling or changing his schedule. And I remember one time at lunch, we just stopped for a bite of lunch, and we were in this place that had, it's a sports arena. It's got the video TV up there. And I'm saying, isn't that the Dalai Lama on stage? And they said, yes. And so we go running back because he'd changed the schedule. He'd come back early and was starting, So it really took a lot of adaptability for that, for sure. But here's just some of the things he was up to. Well, he was meeting with the leaders of Congress and the Senate, and the Today Show with Ann Curry, and of course, President Obama. And the meeting, as you know, with the Dalai Lama and President Obama did take place, and they had so much to talk about, and it was just wonderful. So the schedule and agenda was constantly being modified. And important to know, he was meeting with so many regular people and Tibetan people and so forth in groups. But it was very full, just constant on the go for him. So even though the Dalai Lama had a very long and extremely busy schedule for 11 days, his vitality was wonderful. In fact, it was amazing throughout. And then it was time for the Dalai Lama to leave Washington, D.C., but not to rest. Instead, the Dalai Lama immediately flew to Chicago for 2 days of public interfaith programs, and I did too. It seems that 5 months before Kalachakra began, the Dalai Lama's office switched his interfaith event, a 2-day public event in Chicago, that was going to be held with the Theosophical Society in America. They switched that from 2012 to 2011 and said, we'd like to do it in 5 months. So that was a huge thing to create. And then also they wanted it to immediately follow Kalachakra. So think of the energy that it took for him to do that. Anyway, National Theosophical Society President Tim Boyd immediately scrambled and did all these things to try to organize this. And actually, I had agreed to be a sponsor with the Theosophical Society for this interfaith event in 2012. But when I got the call about 2011, I said, of course, sure. But then that meant I was immediately on a plane to Chicago too, just like the Dalai Lama. So fortunately, his energy level was still high, and in Chicago he gave a wonderful interfaith talk. And then the next day there was an interfaith panel discussion, which was wonderful, major religions involved. And I was there with my guests, David and Joanne Hopper. So we have more people that you know. So following 2.5 weeks of the most intense, full spiritual work, both in Washington, D.C. and in Chicago, and this was part of this world tour, which included the United States leg. The world tour was completed, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama returned to Dharamsala. It was an outstandingly successful and widely beneficial 2.5 weeks of spiritual work in the United States. And for all of those of you who attended, for those of you who watched things live streaming over the internet or attuned in any way, you know that, don't you? Yeah. It has this magical ability to reach out and touch us all, and it's just amazing. So I think we do all appreciate His Holiness the Dalai Lama and what he has offered us. We honor him and we deeply thank him. So I've enjoyed sharing my recent behind-the-scenes experiences with you, with the Dalai Lama, and I thank you very much.
Some questions?
Yes, this is unusual for me. I have a few minutes left, so if anyone has questions, we'll take a few questions or comments.
What's next?
Well, what's next? There's a couple of nexts. I am hearing about a wonderful Dalai Lama event next year that Susan Fangman's going to be involved with in Louisville, Kentucky, and I think I will try to help them as I can. I don't know what you mean, what else is next? That's with him. For me, one thing that's next is I'm going to Tibet and Mount Kailash in about a month, so that's what's next for me. But. Oh, and one more thing, what's next, I'm also launching an internet television channel called the Spiritual Life Channel. It's going to be a source of ageless wisdom teachings, and I will have many of our people here in doing this bridging work out to the awakening public. So I'm really, really thrilled about that too. More about that later, yeah. Mar.
Olivia, I just checked YouTube. The current hit as of 1 hour ago was 8,699 views for DK Kalachakra Shambhala. If you haven't seen it, just Google DK Kalachakra Shambhala.
That's just wonderful, because this was definitely a teaching video. It wasn't a travel log, it wasn't a show and tell, it was a deep teaching video, and we were able to take David's talk here and then enhance it with the different pictures that brought his words to life. So, it's just wonderful when we can use these ways to get the teaching out. Anything else? Okay, well then, thank you so much. I really have enjoyed sharing this.